V'jantif, everyone. Welcome to the second COVID Temple Beth Am High Holiday Experiment. Can't wait for year 3. Chas v'shalom. We are going to begin with Mincha. It's on page 431 in the Lev Shalem Machzor. We'll be led by Larry Herman as he celebrates being here on campus with his granddaughter. Welcome. And again, it's 431 in the Lev Shalem Machzor for Ashrei.
Ashrei Yoshevetecha Urichasela. Tov Adonai Kol V'Rachama V'Kama Asav. Tzadikim B'Chol Rachav V'Chasei B'Kama Asav. Tehillat Adonai Repi V'Yivrecha B'Asar Shem Katsho L'Olam V'Ed V'Yanachnu Nevarechia Me'atav L'Olam Hallelujah. יתגדל ויגדש שמי רבה ויעמד יברח ורותיו ומחמחותי בחי יכון ויכון ובחי ירחו בישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב אמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומעמיה יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו לעילם מנחה ברכתה וישרתה תושבחתה ונחמתה Tamiram b'yamav yamru amen.
We'll do Mincha as a Hecha Kedusha, which means that Larry will begin on 433. We'll stay standing through the Kedusha on 434, and then we go back to the beginning and say the Amidah to ourselves in a silent whisper. When you follow the red instructions of the Machzor, make sure you add the inclusions that say before Rosh Hashanah and not before Yom Kippur.
Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu v'lei Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'lei Yaakov Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Nra El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'konei Hakol V'zocher Chasdei Avot U'mevii Guel L'vnei B'nehem L'man Shemo B'Ahava Melech Chozer Moshiach Magen Baruch Ata Adonai Magen Avraham Ata Gibor L'Olam Adonai Mechayim Etim Ata Rav L'Oshia מוריד הטל, מחכה חיים בחסד, מחיים מתים ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים, ומקם שני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גברות ומידו מלאך, מלך מימין בחיים עצמך ישועה, ונאמן תלך למתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם כששמעתי שמותו בשמי מרום, כך כתוב ונערך, וקרא זל ויאמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות מלך ארץ כבודו למענתם ברוך יאמרו ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו ודירי חושך כתוב לאמור ימלוך אדוני לעולם אלוהי ציון לדור ודור הללויה לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך תקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש
you're still in the middle of your tefillah, please continue at your own pace. We continue with Aleinu, page 442. Sorry, Kaddish Alein, page 441. My apologies.
יתגדל ויגדל שמי רבה, ביעמד יברח חירותי ונמיך מלכותי, וחייכון ומייכון וחי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב, אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך, לעולם ומעלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי לקודשה, בריחו, לעולם עם כל ברכתה וישורתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, תמירם ביומה ויאמרו אמן. תתקבל צלותון ובטון לכל ישראל, קדם ובון לפשמיא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום הרבה משמיא וחיים עלינו ויעקב ישראל ואמרו אמן. ועושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ויעקב ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Now we do Aleinu, page 442.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל. על כן נקבל לכון אלוהינו, לראות מהרה בתפארתך לבימים. ככתוב בתורתך לא ימלוך עולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני מלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אחד ושמו אחד.
Kadisha Tom Warner's Kaddish, page 443.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב יאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומעלמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתהלל ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו, לעולם עם כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן ביעמה ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Shakoach, Larry, we invite Rabbi Chorny to the bima as we hear those first few notes of the Yamim Noraim season, which transport us sometimes across decades, time zones, next to family members who might be with us right now, next to family members whom we've missed for decades, as these iconic notes introduce exactly where we are in the season and exactly what our hearts should be focused on now and for the next 10 days for sure, and on some level at all times. So in a moment, we're going to say the Baruch Hu on page 5, and please rise as Rabbi Chorny begins us with the iconic nigun.
Umavir yom, umevi layla, umav מבטיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו, אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, המריב הרבים, אהבת עולם, בית ישראל מחבת, תורה ומצוות, חוקים ומשפטים. כי הם חיינו ואורך ימינו ובהם נגי יומם ולילה ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת, ורק הוא זאת וקיים. הללויה. ומלכותו ורצון קיבלו עליהם משה ובני ישראל, לכנו שירה לשים לך רבה ויאמרו לכולם ניחמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נזהר בקודש לא רוצה הילות אוסיף אלי מלכותך ובניך מוקי הים לפני משה זה לי אנו ויאמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגילו ביד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאלי ישראל. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום ועמיתנו מלכנו בחיים. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ושלום מטובי עד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך Baruch atah Adonai, haporesu kadosh shalom. Aleinu, v'hale kol amo Yisrael, v'hal Yerushalayim.
Amen. Please rise, page 10.
Tikehu v'chodesh shofar, v'kesel liyom echagenu, ki chok liYisrael hu, mishpat leElohei Yaakov. Yitzkadol, v'yitzkadash, Shemei Rabbah, V'olam ha'tifra kirutei, V'yamlich malchutei, B'chayei chon, U'v'yomei chon, U'v'chayei techol beit Yisrael, V'gala, U'v'zman mikariv, V'miru ha'amin, Yehi Shemei Rabba mevarach, V'halam ulhalim mihalaya, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitzpahar, V'yitzromam, V'yitznaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Zekudesha, Berichu Leila, Leila, Min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata, V'mecha marta, Damiron mehama, V'meru amin.
The quiet Amidah for Erev Rosh Hashanah begins page 11. In some ways, it's a challenging Amidah because it challenges us in the first paragraph. Those of us who are used to going through those first two pages instinctively without thinking about it, we have to think or we'll miss pretty soon the first of the four special additions to the Amidah that we say throughout the season. So if you normally go quickly in the Amidah, go slowly and make sure to add in all those special words to introduce us into the season of return and remembrance and repentance. Quiet Amidah, page 11. We're still davening. Please continue at your own pace. Kaddish Shalem, page 19.
Yitkata Shemei Rabba
Amen.
Ve'amati v'rak Hirutei ve'amlich malchutei V'chayichon uvyomeichon U'chayetecho beit Yisrael V'gala u'bizman kariv V'imeru Amen. Yehi Shemei Rabba Mevarach Le'alam Ulamei Hamaya Yitzparach V'Shabach V'Yitbarich Ramam V'Yitnasei V'Yithatar V'Yitale V'Yitala Shemei Dekudesh Averichu Le'Eila Le'Eila Mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran le'alma v'imeru, amen. Titkabal zelot tehon, uval tehon d'chol Yisrael, kadam avuhon, divishmaya, 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 V'imeru, amen. Yehesh lama rabba, min shemaya v'chaim, aleinu le'okol Yisrael. V'imeru, amen. Hasi shalom ibromav, Shalom, Aleinu, Aleinu, Ve'akol Yisrael, Me'imeru, Amen.
May be seated. Remember when we used to have a used to? We used to be able to reminisce about things that were norms that were familiar and comfortable. Doesn't necessarily mean they were right, but they were at least familiar and comfortable. Well, our community used to have a used to for many years. We used to do high holidays pretty much the exact same way, sometimes a different cast of characters, a different order of things, but you get used to patterns and they're part of what makes life, communal life, spiritual life, feel okay. So one of my used to's up until last year was that on Erev Rosh Hashanah, where the davening is short and lovely and sweet, I would offer a short little vort, a short little Dvar Torah, a story, and then share Hakarat HaTov, share my appreciation for the innumerable members of this community, lay and professional, for all of the extraordinary work they do that keep us and sustain us. Last year, that used to got upended as Erev Rosh Hashanah became an entirely different thing. I don't think we were in person at all last year, right? It was all digital. I gave my Rosh Hashanah sermon last year in the evening, not in the not in the morning, as we tried to get used to COVID year number 1. And so that obliterated the previous used to. And once you obliterate the previous used to, you might as well keep obliterating it. So in lieu of my sharing a word of Torah with you this evening and an extended Hakarat Tov, which I still intend in my heart, I'm just not going to articulate it, it's our honor this evening to hear a Dvar Torah from Rabbi Matt Shapiro. Depending on where you are in the community and where you're located day to day, week to week, you may not interact with him directly as you once did a couple years ago when he was our interim associate rabbi, because he's focused most of the time on the youth of our community, aside from the day school experience, and doing an extraordinary job in raising up that community to new heights. But in addition to that, he's a full-fledged and full-hearted and full-minded rabbi who has so much to share with us as he explores what the tradition means to him, and particularly what the season means to him. And I'm so delighted that he stepped forward to offer words of insight for us tonight. So once again, our darshan this evening is Rabbi Matt Shapiro.
Shana Tova, everyone. How's the sound? Good? I'm the aforementioned Rabbi Matt Shapiro. I have one request before I start. These chairs are set up for a day 1 Rosh Hashanah crowd, and we have here an Erev Rosh Hashanah crowd. So here's my request. I understand if you're being careful because of COVID, but if you're comfortable, would you do me a favor? Could you scooch up a couple of rows? Anybody? It's the opposite of a Dodger game. Nobody wants the front row seats. Come on, like, let's yeah. It's an intimate group. That's nice. Good. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. It's nice. Right? Yeah. Thanks for indulging me. I appreciate it. Yeah. Have a match bureau. When we sat down a few months ago to plan the high holidays, this wasn't quite what we had in mind. COVID numbers were down, vaccinations were up. Sure, we might decide to start the season outside, but to take advantage of the field, not because of medical precautions. And yet, here we are. It seemed like things were moving in one direction, but then they shifted, and now we find ourselves navigating different circumstances. And on some level, it's disappointing, especially since we thought we would be past this. We thought we had moved past this point. But this construct, a sense of frustration at how life unfolds in a less than straightforward or ideal way, doesn't just happen collectively. It also happens on an individual level, and it happens all the time. For example, I know that I can be more patient with my kids, and sometimes I am. And then I see myself losing my cool yet again. I was proud of myself for the meditation practice I consistently engaged in during lockdown. I was proud that I was using my stationary bike more regularly, but both of those routines have been irregular recently at best. 2 steps forward, 1 step, okay, a step and a half back, right back into old patterns. I'm confident I'm not the only one who experiences this. There are any number of examples: a diet you don't keep up with, or an exercise plan you only sustain for a few days. After all, gyms couldn't stay open if they always had the numbers they had every January 2nd. Now, as I speak tonight, I invite you to reflect on an example from your own life. What's a habit that you hope to finally change? What's a long-standing obstacle you've occasionally gained ground on but haven't yet overcome? We all grapple with this because change isn't linear. That can be frustrating and discouraging. I want to keep moving forward. I want those shifts, those things I've worked hard on, to be permanent, especially when they impact the people around me. Why does it have to be so tough to sustain change? Fortunately, there's a model in our tradition for navigating this perennial challenge: Teshuvah. Teshuvah is most frequently defined as repentance, the process through which we atone for our misdeeds and resolve to handle things differently. But as always, however, translation is inexact. Teshuvah can also mean an answer, a response. When we ask a question, a she'elah, we hope to receive an answer, a teshuvah. So, confronted with a situation in which I might easily stumble or go backwards, I can then ask myself, how will I respond now? And then engage in a process of teshuvah, determining what my answer will be. Teshuvah invites me to grapple with that moment, pushes me to answer the question of how I'm going to respond now. When I get frustrated, when I'm feeling stuck, what will I do? Each moment offers the opportunity and the demand of a new answer. We can't respond to where we had hoped we might be. We can only respond to the situation we're currently in. Acceptance is a prerequisite, and that can be painful. I very well might not want my current experience, especially if I'm being confronted with my shortcomings. But I can't move forward without that recognition. Change demands acceptance, awareness of what's difficult, but it also offers hope for what could still lie ahead. We need that hope. And it has been held out to us for as long as we've been a people. When Moses was at the burning bush, God revealed the name Ehyeh Asher Ehyeh, roughly translated as, I will be that which I will be. This essential transformational idea is further reinforced when Moses asks how he should name God for the Israelites for them to recognize God. God responds that Moses should say, Ehyeh sent me, that I will be sent me to you. God is found in the simple statement, I will be. What can you be? What will you be? I'll pause to note that there's an implicit challenge in this framework. I'm talking about taking the next step, but just as teshuvah can mean repentance or response, it can also be translated as return. So which is it? Forwards or backwards? At the end of Eicha, the book of Lamentations that we read on Tisha B'Av, as we remember moments of destruction throughout our history, we say longingly, Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh Yamenu Kekedem. Return us to you, God, and we'll renew our days as days of old. Seems to be pretty straightforward. We want to go back to the way things were, right? Rabbi Robert Scheinberg has written that this verse can be understood instead as saying, renew our lives as you renewed our lives after we were exiled from the Garden of Eden. It's not a plea for restoration of a formerly perfect condition, but rather a plea for resilience, a plea for the ability to renew ourselves after future crises and dislocations, just as our lives have been renewed before. Rabbi Scheinberg highlights how this verse, composed in response to crisis, reminds us that we have been here before. We've navigated trauma and sadness and pain, and we've recovered. We've found a path forward. We've made it through before, and we can do it again. The very evolution of our tradition teaches us this. Judaism looks very different now than it used to say the least. Our Torah is always the core, the essence, but our religious civilization has shifted quite a bit from when we were wandering through the desert or during the Second Temple period. You won't see any goats here over high holidays, or during the time of the Talmud. We've weathered destruction, we've weathered tragedy, we've weathered massive cultural upheaval, and yet here we are. Still ourselves, and completely different, but still ourselves. This is true on an individual level too. There are ways in which I'm so different from when I was 10 or 20 or even a year and a half ago, and yet I'm still me, for better and for worse. The core remains the same, my characteristics, my personal challenges, and I'm changing every day. Change, I'll add, is twofold. There's the continued shifting of the world around us always, and there are the changes I can choose to make in response to my experience and surroundings. It's both external and internal. As Rabbi Brad Artson has poignantly written, we and the world are not solid substances, but rather recurrent patterns of energy, changing with each instant, but also maintaining continuity from moment to moment. Rabbi Artson highlights that there's this essence that remains, and there's also the recognition that there's fluidity, both around me and within me. So the good news is that change is always happening, and we can respond to it in a meaningful, thoughtful way. The frustrating news, real change takes time. Reb Pinchas of Koretz once taught that it takes 21 years of spiritual labor to uproot and rectify an innate negative character trait. With all due respect to Reb Pinchas, I'm a bit more optimistic, but I do agree that long-standing patterns of behavior and thought don't simply shift permanently over days or weeks or months. It takes ongoing, diligent effort to really change. Teshuvah is a daily spiritual practice, not just something to engage in once a year. This season comes to remind us of its importance, not to simply exempt ourselves from this obligation until next Tishrei. I remember once speaking with someone with long-time sobriety from drugs and alcohol who had an insightful perspective on his sobriety. Whenever he was asked how long it had been since he had drank or used, he would simply say, "I'm sober today." Even after he had sustained his recovery for years, into a decade, he would still just say, "I'm sober today." Why? Because he could only ever work on his recovery one day at a time. So too for all of us. We can each only sustain the patterns, the way of living we aim for in this day that we're currently living. I choose whether I'll meditate or exercise today. When I get annoyed, I can choose what my response is. And I might fall short. We might not rise to the opportunities that this day holds out to us. And we get a chance to try it again tomorrow. Change always offers new opportunities, and Teshuvah offers the framework to seize that moment. Okay, so what's the framework? First, Teshuvah requires an inventory. What was my response to this moment? And was that a positive or a negative response? Then a reflection. What do I want to do next? Lastly, a plan. How will I follow through on that choice? An inventory, a reflection, and a plan. Simple enough, but simple is not necessarily easy. I know intellectually what I want today to look like, what I want this year to look like. The challenge lies in putting it into practice. And as we start this year, I invite you to reflect along with me. What's your vision for how you want to live your life today? What's your plan for how to sustain that response? What's an action that you'll take to bring that about today? And how do you know you'll follow through in the year ahead? What will you be? One more invitation. Please, this is a tough one for me, bring yourself into this process with kindness and with love. Deep, lasting, sustainable change is difficult, really difficult. Our current circumstances are not easy. We will each try to do things a bit differently this year, and sometimes we'll succeed, and sometimes we'll fall short. The real question lies in how we'll respond when we fall short, if we can learn from that failure and then try again. That's nearly impossible to do without this willingness to treat ourselves kindly and lovingly. Respond to yourself as you would a supportive friend, with encouragement and compassion, not as your own worst critic. As the truism goes, progress, not perfection. And there's even been formal research that proves the value of this framing. In a study of patients navigating depression by utilizing cognitive behavioral therapy, researchers saw, and this blew me away, that those with non-linear patterns of change were more likely to improve when they were done with their treatment. I'll say that again. People with non-linear patterns of change were more likely to improve. Having an initial shift followed by what they identified as a depressive spike, sessions where patients seemed to go backwards, actually led to more significant change over time. And to me, that offers some solace in moments when I feel defeated. Rabbi Kalanimus Kalman Shapira, the Eish Kodesh, reflected that the time for Teshuvah is Rosh Hashanah, the anniversary of the creation of the world. This is because Teshuvah is a kind of creativity. We return to who we are meant to be, but have not yet become. We return to growth and possibility that has lain dormant within us and not yet flourished, much as a sculpture lies hidden within a brute block of stone. Here he highlights the ongoing possibility of continued growth and the implicit creativity in that endeavor. This reminds me that, as in all creative acts, this is an opportunity to partner with God, creating ourselves anew, which in turn recreates the world around us. Not only can we partner with God, we can work with each other. We need to. Since we're always changing, we aren't in this alone. We can support each other as long as we're engaged in this work. Whatever you've been reflecting on as I've been speaking, I can almost guarantee that there's someone else here or someone else watching who's dealing with a similar challenge. We grow more, we generate stronger, more sustainable responses when we share transparently and openly about our struggles. Change isn't meant to be navigated alone. The more we band together, the better we get at incorporating this process of Teshuvah into our daily lives, the better equipped we'll be to deal with the changes and challenges around us, the more successful we'll be at navigating the inevitable ongoing fluctuations in our world. This might not be what we planned. And we've made it this far because of how we've responded. I see in all of this that more than anything, our tradition offers hope. Yes, change is ongoing within us and around us, and that also means that change is possible, always. When we do this work, we bring about that creative change into the vision we have for who we want to be as individuals and for who we want to be as a community and as a world. Change isn't linear. Change takes time. Change is difficult. And we aren't in this alone, and it's always possible. As we begin this year, let's commit to making the changes we want and need and hope for in our lives, one day at a time. Let us remember and appreciate that each moment holds the unique and holy possibility of Teshuvah. Shana Tova. I only get to do this once on the high holidays, so I'm really going to enjoy it. Please turn to page 25 for the Aleinu.
Except that I'm going to correct you, because we're going to go back to...
No!
So
you didn't give me
close.
one, please
So
rise.
close.
Come on.
So close.
Not 25. So where are we going? Oh, you want the Teshuvah? I mean, the grape juice? Grape juice will be good, yeah.
It's a new cup. Look.
Oh,
It's
wow.
so pretty. You're gonna make Chef Dan now.
Is it a new cup or is it just clean?
No, it's new.
So please rise for Kiddush on page 24. Thank you, Joey.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'am v'romamanu mikol hashon v'kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'titen lanu Adonai Eloheinu v'yahava et yom hazikaron hazeh yom sheruah mikra kodesh zecher liziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'charta ve'otanu kidasha mikol hamim u'devarecha emet v'kayam lad baruch atah Adonai melech kol haaretz mekadesh Yisrael melech kol haaretz mekadesh Yisrael melech kol haaretz mekadesh Yisrael ויום הזיכרון.
Amen.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
Amen. We continue. We continue with Aleinu, page 25.
Now.
We call back to the bima Rabbi Matt Shapiro to announce the page for Aleinu in its proper time.
Yes.
It wasn't the page number, it was the please rise.
Would everyone please be seated so that Rabbi Matt Shapiro can invite you to rise.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככל עמונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשחרים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד אין עוד אין עוד אין עוד אין עוד אין עוד. We turn ahead to page 27 for Psalm 27 for the high holiday season.
אחת שאלתי מת אדוני אותה אבקש, אחת שאלתי מת אדוני אותה אבקש, שבתי בבית אדוני כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם בנועם אדוני ולבקר בהיכלו, לחזות בנועם בנועם אדוני ולבקר לו האמנתי לראות בטוב אדוני בארץ חיים, קווה אל אדוני חזק ויאמץ ליבך, וקווה אל אדוני.
Kadisha Tov, Mourner's Kaddish, page 26.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קרי, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, V'yitadar, v'yitale, v'yitalal, shemeh dekudsha berichu. Le'ela, le'ela, mikol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, damiran ve'alma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen. Hosei shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, amen.
Tomorrow, we have no idea what's going to happen. Like we don't know who's going to show up where. The place will be open, and come on in. Services are going to take place. Adult service is going to take place in 3 different locations in 3 different forms. Out here, Rabbi Rebecca Schatz and Rabbi Josh Warshawski, Lakum. We welcome back to the community, Rabbi Josh Warshawski. Will be leading the Beitenu service out here at 9 a.m. If you'd like to sleep in, Rabbi Chorny and I will be beginning the Shir Chadash service in the sanctuary at 9:45. Those services are going to end at approximately the same time, at around 12:50 or so. The library meeting is beginning on the roof at 7:45. It's going to be an early service and a shorter service. And there's only going to be a shofar blowing in one place and at one time tomorrow. It's going to be here on the field at the end of both later services. This is not an easy decision for us to make. It's a strange thing for a traditional community to surrender the shofar service in its proper place in the service after the Torah reading and all the blasts that we're used to in Musaf. It's a strange thing to surrender the 100 blasts that you're supposed to get, but we're in a strange moment, and we decided that it did not make sense in a room that was filled to blow the shofar indoors that many times. So we're going to have everyone come together. The end of services out here for one extended shofar service. We aim that to be at around 1 p.m. Before we send you back to your homes. And the next day, might as well mention it now, services will begin at 9 o'clock. The clergy-led service will begin here at 9 a.m. all together. Shir Chadash and Beitenu, all 4 of us will be leading a Hama'alot-style Psukei de Zimra to begin our day in song and in harmony and in meditation. And then we'll split up. Rabbi Chorny and I will be leading out here, and Rabbi Schatzer and Rabbi Warshawski will be leading in the sanctuary, again to meet outdoors at around 1 for shofar blowing. And again, library minute will be meeting on the roof at 7:45 the second day also? Okay. Rabbi Schatz?
And?
Oh, wait.
Wait,
please rise.
Wait, hold on. No.
No, I know
And
it's not
wait.
that. I was.
Hold on. And there will be shofar blowing at the end in the proper space for library minyan. So if you are going to library minyan
Yes.
service, you don't have to stick around campus until 1 p.m.
But you can.
But you can. Yeah, we would love to have you for a second Rosh Hashanah service. But there will be shofar blowing upstairs outside during library minyan.
Rabbi Shapiro?
Rabbi Shapiro?
In case you want more stuff, both days. It's a little low. Yeah? Well, you're sitting very close. Both days at 10:30 over there on Corning 8, there's family programming. Tomorrow, myself and Rabbi Josh Warshawski, who has clearly developed the ability to clone himself, will be running a program designed for families with grade school-age kids, Epic Rosh Hashanah, second day, Tot Rosh Hashanah with me and Morakira, and 12 noon both days in Pilch for Lounge if you want to come do some learning with me. So,
Rabbi Shapiro, explain lounge in one sentence.
Lounge is immersive, thought-provoking, reflective learning, exploring different thematic texts around
Another way of saying
the
it, if you don't
holiday.
like Musaf,
In case you might need a little break from liturgy, we'll be learning in Pilch at noon both days. It's going to be fun.
So we'll end with Yigdal on page 28 to the traditional Yamim Norim Yigdal tune. And then we'll wish each other a good Yontif, a Shana Tova, and we'll see you tomorrow and the next day. And it's so nice to have you here, and so nice to have you Zoomers with us, and whoever's watching on YouTube. We can't wait. Yeah.
No.
Tashlich on the beach, reverse Tashlich.
Reverse Tashlich.
Rather than pollute the water with our bready sins,
We're
We're gonna-
pulling bread out of the water.
we're going to clean the beach from pollution.
One very quick announcement for the people who are on Zoom and on live stream. This Zoom that you are on right now will remain on from this evening until Wednesday evening. So if you would like to not have to deal with your technology during the Chag, you can just leave your computer open and this service, whatever is on the field, will come through into your home between now and Wednesday evening. Any more announcements?
Yigdal, page 28.
Yigdal Elohim chai v'yishtabach nimsa v'heinei tametziuto echad v'yachid ki yichudo ne'elam v'gam etzav le'ha'achtuto ein lo demutaguf eino guf lo na'aroch elav kidushato kadmon lechol davar asher nira rishon ve'en reshit le'reshito hino adon olam v'chol notzar yorei gedulato u'malchuto shefa nevuato nitano el anshei segulato v'tifarto lo kam be'Yisrael k'Moshe od navi u'mavi temunato Torah temachnatan li'amoel ayat nevio ne'eman beito lo yachal yifahel v'lo yamir dato li'ol anim lezulato sofei ve'yodeha setareinu mavi lesof davar bekad mato gomer leish chesed kimi falo notein lerash hara kirishato yishlach leketz yamnin meshichaynu liftot mechakeket Yeshuato mitim yechayel meroch asto baruch adei shem tehilato mitim yechayel meroch asto baruch adei shem tehilato.
Please rise and go home to a delicious dinner.
Shkaya, shkaya. Good Yantiv, Chag Sameach, everybody. Shana Tova.